They called it holy, but those who endured it remembered it as terror. In medieval Europe, marriage was never private. It was not love, it was law, it was bloodline, it was obedience. And when the vows ended at the altar, the church did not look away. It followed the bride into the dark. The wedding night was believed to be the most dangerous moment of a woman's life, not because of sin but because of transformation. A bride was crossing from purity into sanctioned desire, and the church feared what might be born in that crossing, so it placed itself there to watch. In isolated dioceses, loyal to Rome, marriage chambers were not considered safe spaces. They were spiritual battlegrounds. Candles were lit not for romance but for vigilance. Prayers were spoken not for love but for control. The bride was instructed to kneel before the bed. She was told to pray silently, to submit her body first to God before submitting it to her husband. Her dress was loosened by other women, not for comfort but to prepare her for inspection. Her breath was measured. Her composure watched. Outside the chamber, clergy waited, sometimes behind doors, sometimes behind curtains, sometimes according to surviving testimonies inside the room itself, veiled and silent, claiming spiritual authority. The church insisted this presence was necessary. They believed the soul was weakest during moments of change. Birth, death, marriage, and weakness invited corruption. The bride was warned not to scream. Too much fear suggested impurity. Too much eagerness suggested sin. Silence was praised as virtue. Stillness was holiness. If she trembled, it was written as devotion. If she resisted, it was written as defiance. And defiance was never forgiven. In some regions, priests demanded proof that the marriage had been sealed correctly. Blood on the sheets was interpreted as divine approval. Its absence raised suspicion. Questions followed. Confessions were demanded. Annulments were threatened. The burden always fell on the woman. Days later, she might be summoned before clerical authorities. Her body discussed in cold, measured language. She was asked what she felt, how she reacted, whether she obeyed. Her husband's testimony carried authority. Hers carried guilt. There were darker accounts still, ones never meant to survive. Women later whispered of a second ritual performed after midnight. A priest entering the chamber alone carrying scripture and a crucifix. He would pray over the bed, over the bride, over the union. His words meant to cleanse desire, even as it was permitted. Some women said the prayers lasted too long, that the priest's gaze did not stay on the cross, that the church did not stop at blessing. Official records deny this. The Vatican has always denied it. Yet fragments remain. Letters burned halfway. Bishops quietly removed. Disciplinary actions without explanation. Warnings sent from Rome urging discretion and silence. If nothing happened, why erase so much? The medieval church feared sex even as it controlled it. It believed the body was weak, especially the female body. Brides were seen as thresholds, doors through which sin could enter the world if not guarded. So they guarded them, closely, too closely. For many women, the wedding night became a moment of confusion and shame rather than joy. They learned marriage did not free them from surveillance. It intensified it. Their bodies belonged to husbands, to God, and to an institution that claimed authority over flesh. Some women recorded their fear in secret journals. Others spoke only on their deathbed. A few vanished into convents soon after marriage, claiming spiritual calling that smelled like escape. By the late Middle Ages, these practices began to fade, not because they were cruel, but because they were dangerous. The Reformation loomed. Skepticism spread, and priests policing bedrooms no longer appeared holy. It appeared corrupt. So the ritual disappeared quietly. No announcement, no apology, no confession. The Vatican never acknowledged it, but silence can be its own admission. All that remains now are whispers. Folk songs warning brides to pray not for love, but survival. Records that hint without explaining. And the knowledge that what happened behind closed doors was sometimes more horrifying than anything spoken from the pulpit. Because the most terrifying rituals are not performed in darkness, they are performed in the name of God. The ritual did not end with the wedding night. That was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the bride was watched more closely than ever. Her body was examined not by doctors, but by priests. Her behavior was measured, her silence interpreted. Any sign of distress was explained away as spiritual weakness rather than harm. If she fell ill, it was said her faith had not been strong enough. If she withdrew, it was said she carried guilt. If she spoke too openly, it was said the devil had loosened her tongue. The church believed that what happened during the wedding night left a mark on the soul, and the soul once marked could not be trusted. Some brides were required to attend private confession immediately after the wedding. Not confession of sin, but confession of sensation. They were asked what they felt, when they felt it, how their body responded. These questions were framed as spiritual guidance, but carried the weight of interrogation. The answers were never neutral. Too little feeling suggested coldness and disobedience. Too much feeling suggested corruption. There was no safe truth. In some dioceses, a woman who failed to meet expectations was assigned penance that lasted months or years. She might be ordered to fast regularly, to sleep on stone, to avoid pleasure entirely, as if to atone for the act she had never consented to being judged for. Others were sent to religious houses, not as nuns but as wives, under observation. Their husbands permitted this, some even encouraged it. A woman under the church's watch was a woman under control. The most disturbing records speak of repeat rituals. In rare cases, a priest returned to the marriage chamber days later, claiming the union had not been properly sanctified. The bride was told this was necessary for protection, or purity, for the future of her children. No witnesses were allowed, no objections accepted. These acts were never named in writing. They were hidden beneath language like correction and spiritual cleansing. But the women remembered. They always remembered. Over time, the stories spread quietly. Mothers warned daughters in whispers. Older women taught younger brides how to endure without reacting, how to keep the face still, how to survive the night without leaving visible marks that would invite further scrutiny. Fear became tradition. The Vatican began to receive complaints not from women but from nobles. Husbands complained that the church interfered too deeply, that priests knew too much, that authority over marriage was slipping from their hands. Power does not like competition. By the 14th century, Rome began issuing vague directives. Bishops were told to reduce involvement, to act with discretion, to avoid scandal. The rituals were not condemned. They were simply pushed into silence. Records disappeared. Instructions were rewritten. What could not be defended was buried. But silence does not erase memory. In remote villages and mountain dioceses, the old practices continued long after Rome pretended they did not exist. There were brides who entered marriage already afraid, women who fainted at the sight of candles, girls who prayed not for love but invisibility. Some tried to flee. Those who did were labeled unstable or possessed. A runaway bride was not escaping harm, she was resisting God's order. That resistance itself became proof of sin. Punishment followed. Others endured and lived quiet lives afterward, never speaking of what happened, but even then the body remembered. Many never allowed themselves pleasure again, believing it dangerous. Believing joy was a trap. The church taught that suffering purified the soul. For these women, suffering became the soul. Centuries later, scholars would argue that these stories were exaggerated, that fear distorted memory, that medieval women misunderstood spiritual guidance. But the patterns repeat too clearly. The same phrases, the same silences, the same erased names. Power leaves fingerprints. When the Reformation shattered Europe's religious authority, many secrets came spilling out. Priests were accused, monasteries raided, letters uncovered, and among them references to weddings, supervision, and nocturnal blessings and corrections administered in secrecy. Rome denied everything. By then it no longer mattered. The trust was broken. Today the Vatican speaks of marriage as sacred and private, of consent and dignity, of love. But these words were learned through failure, not innocence. The horrifying truth is not that such rituals existed, it is that they were justified, that men believed control could be holy, that violation could be framed as protection, that a woman's silence could be interpreted as faith, and perhaps most terrifying of all, that the institution that claimed to guard the soul believed it had the right to stand at the edge of the bed and decide what was pure. The ritual is gone now, but its shadow remains. It lingers in the way authority still enters private life, in the way bodies are judged, in the way silence is mistaken for consent. History does not need monsters to create horror. It only needs power, convinced it is righteous.